So how did you shift from to actually do it? Because taking action is not easy. You can be like, I always say God doesn't drive parked cars. You can't sit in a corner and wish for things. You have to take action, but it's not easy to take the action and you be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. Or you go, oh, well, do 15 minutes a day of this, but it's of what? And how do you start? And what do I do? And
yeah, it's such a good question because that's the real difference between like languishing for a decade, say, and wanting something. And like I'll share, I had that as well in my career at one point. You know, I was feeling trapped and stuck in kind of the role I was in, and it was just comfortable enough to stay, but I didn't know how to get out. And so, talk about the parked car. It was like I was hoping for the best that somehow something would happen to me. Like I guess I was hoping to be headhunted. You know, I don't want to do the scary work of figuring out what to do. I just want to be plucked out of my
that's a good way to put it.
You know?
Just comfortable enough.
Right. But that does not sound like a life worth living, is like just getting by. So back to your question, what to do about it? For me, so much of this comes down to the idea about being courageous and being bold, because for most of us, to live like we mean it requires some kind of effort or initiative. That's to either, maybe it is to make a move from a job or from a relationship, or to say, wait a sec, this is a dream I've had for a while. It could be a goal, like writing a book. And recognizing, like, why am I putting it off? It's usually because we're afraid of something. We're afraid of rejection or failure. And recognizing and saying, what would I rather? You know, would I rather get to my deathbed? And everything with me leads to the deathbed. You know, if I count Mondays, I'm like very interested in the end point. Like if I get to the end, am I going to regret going for it and maybe having it not take off? Or would I regret not doing it? Like, am I going to regret doing it? Like, so for most people, and research is so clear, we regret the things we didn't do so much more than maybe a mistake we made, or, a business plan that didn't take off, or, you asked that person out and they said no. Like, at least we tried. So I think, in terms of the literal first step, this is going to sound kind of silly, but back to the deathbed, like we have to identify the things that we want to do that we're not doing yet. And many of us, we're so busy and we're flitting around that we don't even have, like, we haven't even stopped to say, wait, what would be on my list of stuff that I would regret? Like, can I ask you even, Lauren, like if this was the end for you, you've had a good life, but is there something that could be small, it could be big, that you'd think, wow, I wished that I had done that. Maybe it's a travel, a hobby, a trying of something, anything that would be like, I wished I had done that.
No, I was going to do a TEDx talk. And I kept doing it. And I was like, this is not even on my bucket list. Why am I doing all this work to do it? And I stopped.
Great lesson.
It was, I was like, this is like somebody else's thing.
Yeah.
Like if I want to do it, I'll go back and start trying, but I don't think so. But 52 Weeks of Hope started as a book. So I did just tell somebody yesterday, I have the outline. So I need to go back and do that. So I'm
this
gonna.
Is so great. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. First of all, everybody listening is cheering. This is so great. And like, I presume that if you didn't turn it into a book, you'd feel that pang of regret. Like, I always wanted to do that and I didn't. That would have been.
Yeah. So I have the outline. I was just telling my friend yesterday how, the steps I was taking to, I need an accountability partner, but we went on lockdown and that's how the podcast started. And I don't want to go into that because anyway, that's an episode. That's a few episodes. So, but I believe strongly in accountability partners to help get it done.
Well, unfortunately, we need some accountability to live the lives we've imagined, to quote Henry David Thoreau a little bit. Yeah. If the first step is identifying, what you might regret if you were on your deathbed, and it could be something as frivolous as I always wanted to go to Milan. Or I always wanted to.
Well, let's go back to how did you make the shift? Here you were hoping to be plucked out. So how did you take that shift? And what was it in you? Yeah. So here you were, like just comfortable enough, as you said. You put it in a very good way. What was the nudge? Did you get term? Because I'm an employment lawyer, and I know a lot of times the universe will give you a little nudge. Be like, oh, it's your time, and you'll get terminated or something like that. And then you get to do what it is you always wanted to do.
Totally. Yep. I worked with a career coach. So I finally said, like, I'm just sort of toiling, spinning around. So I figured out what would be examples of things that I might like to do. And then I had to initiate informational interviews. And at the time for me, I shifted into leadership development and executive coaching. And that meant that I had to take a new program for a year to get certified. And that was fine. That was great. I mean, heck, love that. And rebuilding, like building my own business. So getting up the gumption to say, I'm going out on my own to do this. And so I think sometimes you have to take the risk. Like, here's the thing. If I had done the thing where I said, I'm going to part-time, evenings and weekends, stick it in the day, do a little bit of, at the time it was coaching or workshops. There also would have been just enough comfort to not really make a move. But for me, I had to do a cold turkey. Like, I had to say, I am done. I'm transitioning. And I needed the discomfort of, I need to now replace my income, or I need to feel like I am really contributing, or I need to make a difference. Like, I need to feel like so I needed it to be a little bit of a grand gesture. I don't think that everybody needs or wants that, but it was working with someone to help me see, this is really the thing that I think is going to give me a shot at joy. And I'm going to go for it, and being brave enough to say, well, I'm going to jump into the deep end of the pool, not put my toe in the shallow end.
Which is great. And now, did you surround yourself with people who were like, yeah, you can do this? Because it's the naysayers that it's like, no, stay away from them. And
yeah, I didn't have a lot of naysayers. I just don't really know. I don't hang around with them. So I don't have them in my life.
So good.
Yeah. So they've already been ixnayed. I don't know. But I would say, yeah, I mean, my husband's been a delight, and I would say, and patient, and, that was a big difference. I think really the main impetus for me kept coming back to thinking about my mom, like, not out of a fear that it kept me up at night or an angsty fear, but because there's a difference, right, between that and a little bit of like a existentially rooted fear, which is where I wanted. This is the science I work in, and it's appropriate fear. It's like, I do not want my time cut short. That would suck. But it was more than that, right? It was like, I need to show myself. I want to be proud of myself that I gave it a go. And I want to look back, and I don't have kids. So this for me is not a legacy project of like teaching any kid around me how to live. It was more about demonstrating to myself that I care enough about myself and this precious life I've been granted in order to say, I don't want to languish anymore. I don't want to settle. Settling and tolerating are two of the most disgusting words, And I was doing a lot of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely.
Yeah.
So you used a word earlier on intention and being intentional. How important is that with this work?
Oh, it's so crucial. I'm glad you picked up on it. You're a smart cookie, right? Like, we get busy doing things. Like, a lot of the times we can be super busy, but we're super bored at the same time, right? Like, we're toiling and like we're moving around doing all the tasks, or we've filled our days with stuff, or even our evenings, dare I say, like our quote unquote discretionary time when we're not working, if our work is not necessarily our own choice. But it's not stuff that fills the proverbial cup up. It's like, it's just stuff. And that's not living with intention. That's just that's back to the zombie zone. That's living in autopilot, which is one of the greatest sort of fears that I would love for us all to appropriately hold on. Like, wait a minute, I do not want autopilot, which means I am going with the flow. And I'm not stopping and saying, wait a minute, what would make my evening actually feel more alive tonight? Because all we're doing is living like literally one night at a time, one day at a time, one morning at a time. I even boil it down to 20-minute increments, because that's just the way life gets lived. It's like the decision of like, what are you going to do for lunch today? Are you going to do what I do, which is answer emails the whole entire time you're scarfing back food? Or are you going to stop and say, I actually think I might like my day more, and then therefore my life more, if I paused for 20 minutes, okay, even 10. And I'm going to give you an example. A woman I know made a conscious choice. She has a child in preschool, and she did the math because she's reading my book right now. And so she's very interested in this, like counting things down. She's like, my son, this is his last year in preschool, and I know how many weeks he has left in preschool. And so she made it a plan that every one day a week, so for her it's Friday, she's going to take her son out to lunch. And she goes, and it's so easy. And he loves Subway. So she's going to go to Subway with her son. She goes, it's 15 minutes to sit there. And I'm going to say, what'd you learn today? And we're going to have our little time. And he's going to have this little sub. And I'm like, wait, does a kid eat a sub like a foot long? Anyway, it doesn't matter. And she's going to bring him back, and then that is going to be an example that is, she's like, it's not a lot of money at all. it's not a lot of time. It's just making a decision to like be intentional about spending time. In this case, it's with her kiddo and with herself. For many of us, it's just our own time with ourselves. We're not being intentional and we're missing the chance to live like we mean it. Like at the end of a day or at the end of a week or a month, we could say, wow, I showed up, rather than I just floated by.